So in terms of agenda, what we're going to talk to in this session, and you would have registered, when you registered, this is the business session. So we're not going to go too deep in this session. We're going to talk about Windows 8. We're going to talk about what the UI looks like. We're going to talk about those features. And also probably, who's actually been seeing some of the press coming out recently around Windows 8's a disaster, it's never going to take off, the UI's too hard. We've all seen that sort of stuff. So we're going to try and dispel some of those myths this morning, because yes, there is a transition process. Yes, there is something new we have to learn. But actually, we've been running it in production for quite a period of time now, and we've actually found it to be quite a good experience. So hopefully, we're going to show you some of the actual interface changes and get a feel for what's changed with Windows 8. So in terms of the client landscape, we're going to talk about XP. We're going to talk about Windows 7, because that's probably one of the biggest questions we get at the moment around, I'm on Windows 7, what I'm going to do about Windows 8. We're going to talk about migration and our experience with our pilot. So the first thing is Windows XP. Now there's an Easter egg on this slide, so hopefully for the people who've used XP, you'll actually see what I've done to this slide. But I suppose the first thing is Windows XP is N-2. So when you think about N-2, that's talking about Microsoft support policy. So Windows 8, when it RTMs, is the new version of Windows. The previous two versions of Windows is Windows 7 and Windows Vista. So Windows N-2, XP is no longer supported. Justin talks to that further, but in April 2014, XP is end of life. What does that mean? You will not get security patches anymore. If you actually have a critical bug that you actually need to go and lodge a call, you have to pay Microsoft to actually get that supported. So it is end of life. The other thing you start seeing is hardware manufacturers, it costs money to write drivers for hardware, right? You're going to start seeing manufacturers actually starting to pull support for XP. They're going to start supporting the N-2 policy. You're going to start getting challenges around getting things like drivers for devices from hardware manufacturers as well. And I suppose the other key point is, who still uses a modem to get to the internet at home? Anybody? Well, when XP shipped, we used to use dial-up to get to the internet. It's 10 years old. Like USB was actually just coming out in the mainstream 10 years ago. This is an old operating system. So if you're on XP, firstly, you're giving people a 10-year-old experience. Most people aren't driving cars that are 10 years old, and we're still presenting that experience to our customers. So now's the time, if you're still on XP, is to really start thinking about that transition planning. The big question though, and we get this a lot from our customers, I'm on Windows 7, what should I do? Well, the first thing is, if you are on Windows 7, great job. You've gone through the application compatibility work, you've done your testing, you've done your repackaging, hopefully, and you deployed Windows 7. You're in pretty good shape to actually go to Windows 8, because the majority of applications that you've tested for Windows 7 will work on Windows 8. It is the same plumbing underneath, so all of that's still the same. So if you've done that work, great. But if you're on Windows 7 right across your fleet, what should I do about Windows 8? Well, Windows 8 is obviously the latest operating system. Windows 7 is actually, believe it or not, nearly 3 years old now. Because we were one of the first deployments in Australia, and we deployed on the 9th of the 9th, 2009, easy date to remember. And that was just after general availability. It's 2012. So believe it or not, Windows 7's been in market 3 years already. So if you're going to go and deploy, if you haven't deployed yet Windows 7, and you're sort of in that final, like in mid-planning, it would be, it's worth considering Windows 8. But the other thing we actually do strongly recommend is and we're going to talk a bit more about this, but also think about the types of users you've got. And we'll talk to that coming up. And the reason thinking about users is what sorts of devices actually apply to those people, and maybe adopt some new multi-touch devices with Windows 8, and maybe have a mixed fleet that might work for you as well. So what's our position? So Data3 was Australia's first commercial deployment of Windows 7. We had deployed by the 9th of the 9th, 2009. We were fully deployed a week and a half after the actual code was released for Windows 7. Not general availability, the actual code was actually available through MSDN and TechNet. So we were actually really early movers on that. It's been amazing for our business, Windows 7. Sometimes ICT companies, it's a bit like plumbers' drains. We actually tell you guys that you should package. We tell you guys you should use SCCM to deploy, and tell you all this best practice stuff, but sometimes behind the scenes, the actual ICT company itself doesn't do, sometimes, a bit like plumbers' drains. So we actually approached Windows 7 like we actually ask you to do it. We actually formed a project team. We actually deployed SCCM. We went through the packaging work. We found some really busted apps that didn't work properly, and we had to use AppV to go and remediate those. And we actually treated it like a commercial deployment. So because we actually treat it like a commercial project, it's been amazing for our business. And one of the things that set us up in good shape for our Windows 8 pilot is the actual application work we did. Because the applications are already packaged, they're in pretty good shape, we just have to run them through a testing process for Windows 8. But the thing was, when Windows 7 shipped, if you think about it 3 years ago, this whole generation of touch devices that are in market now, we're only just starting to hit mainstream. Like, really the last 3 years we've seen the real rise of these touch devices. When Windows 7 hit market, they were in their relative infancy and they really hadn't hit commercial mainstream. So Windows 7, when it was actually released, was an operating system that was released with touch as a bit of an afterthought. It wasn't a touch-centric operating system. Windows 8, and you'll see this through the course of this morning, is absolutely a touch-first operating system. And we are deploying it, and I'll talk about our pilot in the next slide. So the Data 3 pilot, we actually, and as you should in a pilot, if you have a group of pilot users, you should, hopefully, in open pilot, take the device that they're currently using away and give them the device that you're piloting. Because if you ask a user to say, well, this is the pilot, please use this device, what they're going to do? They're going to go back to what they know. So it's pretty hard to get people to commit to a pilot when they've got their old device available. So our pilot, we said, right, here's your new multi-touch device, and in my case, this is the device I'm using. So it's a touch device, Windows 8, and it's got a Bluetooth keyboard and stylus with it that goes with it. And the business said, that's great, Scott, give us your laptop back, because you're going to commit boots and all. So you're actually going to use this as your primary computing device. You can give us back your iPad, and that's it. That's your device now. So I've been using that device as my primary device for about 4 months with the actual betas of Windows 8 and then the release code as well. And I suppose the background behind it was, we were wondering, can one device do it all? If you're a traveller a lot, you've probably sat at the airport and looked around. You'll see most people have got a laptop bag, and in that laptop bag they've probably got their laptop, power adapter, an iPad and a smartphone. Most people travel that way. And I don't know about you, but I just don't like travelling heavy. I'm getting sick of carrying too much stuff on the road. You've got to lug it around, you've got to take multiple charges. So I suppose our rationale was, can you have one device that actually can do it all? Can I have a device that gives me 10 hours of battery? Lets me play Angry Birds in the plane when I get bored? But then when I land, I can do email on it. And because that's really the use case, isn't it? We use these things like iPads to consume content, but then we need a device where we can produce content as well. And what we've ended up with is a consumption device and a production device in terms of producing content. So the rationale behind our pilot was, can we have a device that can do both? And I suppose the results for us have been pretty impressive. Like, we've found that the Windows 8 device in that sort of format, or the new formats that are coming out. And remember, our pilot was before all these new generation of ultra form factors are coming out. You'll see there's this new massive wave of devices about to ship from our partners. So our pilot was a little bit crippled because we didn't have all the new hardware, but even on this device, which is the Series 7 Samsung device in my case, it's been a pretty amazing result. But the keys to adoption and things to consider when you're looking at Windows 8, firstly you have to think about users, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there's also, you now have to start thinking about devices. At the moment, most of you in corporate ICT departments have probably narrowed down a couple of devices and you go, they're our SOE devices, and when we turn over our fleet at 1/3 every year, we go and get a whole bunch of these new ones. The challenge with that is the whole wave of devices that are coming out changes what you're going to consume. You've got things like just pure slates. You've got the convertibles where you've actually got the monitor that docks into a keyboard. You've got the all-in-one touch screen, and you've got the traditional laptop. So you've got to think about what devices are appropriate for who as well. And then there's software. Firstly there's Windows 8 itself and the new interface. So you've got to consider change management at the organisation level. So you've got to adopt Windows 8, and you have to actually assist your users through that journey in terms of the adoption. Most people actually get it. There's a video up on YouTube that's went viral yesterday, and it's a 3-year-old kid stepping his dad through Windows 8. Now, admittedly, 3-year-old kids actually get the iPads too, and sometimes parents don't. But, a 3-year-old kid can actually step the parent through Windows 8, so they get it. So, I think we're making mountains out of molehills sometimes when we see this press about this massive change, and it's all big and scary. And then there's the applications. And when I talk about applications, you're going to have the major software vendors, and like our partners Adobe who are here today, who've actually already gone through the process of making applications more touch-centric and actually making them touch-friendly. But you've also got internal line of business applications you might have developed. And they use styluses and drop-down menus and that sort of stuff. You need to look at that stuff when you're actually going to a new modern touch platform saying, is that still appropriate to deliver applications that way? Is there a better way to actually redevelop those applications if we're going to go and redevelop them anyway? So applications, you need to, these apps now leverage touch, so you need to think about applications that actually support touch from the operating system as well. So the first thing is users. Data 3 is like most of your organisations. We have highly mobile people like myself who seem to live more in airports than at home. You have people who might be payroll clerks who just actually go to one desk every day and they use one computer and they hardly roam at all. So you've got to think about the types of users and what's appropriate for those users within your organisation. And those users need to be profiled. Highly mobile workers who consume content. Highly mobile workers that actually produce content. Static workers that actually just are task-based workers that don't move at all. Because that if you start thinking about that process, that impacts your the devices that they're actually going to use. Some people may not need a change in device at all, but some people might need new devices. So you've got to think about, firstly, users and the types of users and how they work. And that's a pretty important exercise. Are they mobile or static? And the other thing is, are they a consumer or a creator of content? If they're a consumer of content, touch might be all they need. But as soon as you start doing anything too serious about content creation, you find yourself reaching for a mouse and a keyboard. So it's all about consumption and creation of content as well. And then there's the other thing, and this is actually a really interesting use case. Justin and I use exactly the same device. And I work completely differently to Justin. I find I've got the stylus with my device. I haven't pulled it out once. I just don't use the stylus. I'm a finger guy, so I go around with the fingers. And sometimes when you're actually on a legacy app that's actually got drop downs, that can be a bit interesting because you're trying to push the button and actually make the drop down work, and that's a bit of a challenge. But Justin actually uses his stylus. So in OneNote, I pop up the on-screen keyboard and I'm typing notes in OneNote on the on-screen keyboard. Justin uses the handwriting recognitions and uses the stylus. So people actually work differently in terms of how they input content as well, either finger, pen or keyboard. And that affects the type of device and how those people work as well. And they're things to consider. The next thing is devices. We've got an amazing amount of new devices coming out from just about everybody in our major hardware partners. And it's a pretty exciting time because for the longest time, what we've got is the same thing with a slightly tweaked case and maybe a bit better res monitor. But this stuff is absolutely changing completely now. So for example, we've got the Slate here, which is like the one I just showed you. You have the traditional Ultrabook form factor, which is a bit like a laptop. And you've got these all-in-ones like the HP that you saw in the other room and the Lenovo. What you're also going to start seeing though is with this device, is you're going to start seeing the actual convertible, where all the processor and all the storage and memory and disk is here. This is the keyboard and the battery's in that. So some of our partners, most of our partners are actually going to produce those sort of devices. And the numbers we're hearing are pretty impressive. Some of these devices are going to give us 18 hours battery life. Think about 18 hours. Who's flown like Melbourne-Perth? A few of you? That's a long flight. You struggle to get the full life of a battery out of that flight when you're actually working. At some point, and you may want the battery to run out so you can have a break, but some people actually do want to keep working to the other end. If you get an 18 hours battery, you can do that flight 3 times. Maybe one leg 3 times, but you get what I'm talking about. You're getting a much more battery out of that device. And so that's pretty impressive. I suppose the other thing is they are touch-centric devices. They've been designed by our hardware partners to leverage touch. They're all about leveraging touch. They also do still have keyboard and mouse, and you've seen some of them that still have the actual trackpad on there. Most of these convertibles do still have the trackpad there, so you can use it like a laptop, but then you can just literally pull the monitor off and go to a meeting and it's a slate. So that's a pretty interesting form factor. They are thinner, lighter and faster, there's no doubt about that. And we're looking at some of the devices today and comparing some of the current generation devices to the new ones. They're much thinner, they seem much lighter. They do absolutely have longer battery life. Security is pretty important as well in these devices. So obviously they leverage the actual operating system security and TPM and those sorts of things in the device. So that also helps. And I suppose the other point is that, we are getting the tablets and the convertibles. And some of those are literally where the monitor actually just pulls off the base. Some of them are actually where it swings around and folds back down on itself. There's all sorts of different devices coming out.
Okay, so here we are in the Start menu. Now there's a couple of things that I want to take you through. When Microsoft developed this interface, they really had touch in mind. So when you're holding a slate, effectively your thumbs are facing forward, so you can utilize these to access your swiping menus. Swiping from the right-hand side, the left-hand side, the top and the bottom. So let's have a quick look at the Start menu. Here you can see it is an interface that's absolutely designed for touch. We can slide across the Start menu, it's very smooth, and we can get access to content that we want through the Start menu. Start menu is completely customizable as well. When we pinch that menu, it shows us that these different groupings that I've been able to make of my Start menu. And we can start to name them as well into things that are more meaningful. We can do that by simply swiping down and clicking Name Group and giving that group a particular name. Now what I want to do is I'm going to zoom back in and we can see this customizable Start menu. If I swipe from the right hand side, I'm bringing up the charms that are available. So we can see the search, the share, the start, the settings charms. So let's go and have a look at Start for search. I'll open up search and I'm going to search for the mapping application. Now the first thing you'll notice here is when we're searching for something, we're not just searching through the index file system, we're also searching through applications, through settings. Or further down you can see here, we can start to search through applications that we've got installed on our system as well. So I'm going to load up the mapping application. And what it's brought me up here is a map of Australia. Now using multi-touch on the device, I can pinch to zoom in and I can start to swipe around, giving myself that smooth experience that I would expect from a touch-based device. But you know what, if I don't have touch, I can still use the mouse to navigate around the application as if I was just using a touch-based system. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back to the Start menu and I'm going to bring us up another application. So I'm going to go and bring up my calendar. Now from my calendar here, you'll see all the things that I've got on at the moment. Now, tomorrow I'm travelling to Canberra. I need to go in and have a look at exactly where I'm travelling to. So what I want to do is I want to switch between the applications that I've got on. Open here. So I've got the calendar and I could switch between my mapping application. I could pinch in again and go and locate where I need to be tomorrow. But what about if I want both applications on the screen at the same time? Swiping from the left-hand side, I can bring my my calendar application in the same screen as my Maps application. And you can see it automatically changes the focus based on the view that I've selected. If I hold my finger on that line in the middle of the screen and slide that across, then the mapping application will change its focus again and represent in something that's better for that window. Now if I want to close that down, it's a matter of swiping from the top of the screen, sliding down, and it will close that application. I can now grab that line and give it full access to all of the real estate that's available on that screen for me. So I'm going to close that one down as well. Now, what about if I want to jump into an application like my People app? And what you can see here is we're sitting in the Start menu and these live tiles are scrolling through, and you'll notice my People application is starting to scroll through the contacts. So if I select on that, it's going to show all the contacts that I've got available in my system. Right-clicking from the right-hand side of the screen, selecting Settings and Accounts, you'll see that this is very much a context-based solution. So I can change the settings particularly related to that application. And if I jump back to my Start menu and access the settings, here what you're seeing is it's bringing up settings that are specifically related just to the operating system. So as we change through these applications, open up the settings charm, it's going to actually take me into settings for that particular app. Now the final thing I want to show you is that one of the new features of Windows 8 is the ability to use a picture password. So I'm going to jump into my settings, go into change PC settings, come into users. Now I've already got a picture password selected, but I could change that if I wanted to. So if I only have a normal password, I could come in here and select create picture password and it would create that for me. So what that means is when I jump back to my home screen, I'll lock that. Now I want to unlock it. It shows me a picture of my kids. I can do the swiping motions that I need to unlock my machine rather than having to type in a password. So you can see I get that control now that enables me to log into my machine without having to enter a password. Now in addition to that, the last thing that I want to show you is that you've still got that power using shortcut keys in your keyboard and your mouse to be able to get a really nice experience from Windows here. So if I select Windows W, straight away it takes me to the search, which is much the same as swiping from the right. Or if I use my mouse, I can have that same functionality just by simply bringing up the charms over on the right-hand side.
The one thing we didn't probably cover off, I'll put myself out there in the hands of the demo gods, but the other piece is this is still available too. So we're in desktop mode. So if it all gets a bit too hard and you want to go back and just get a feel for what the world used to feel like, that's desktop. And it's always there in the background. And one of the things like PowerPoint we're running here, which is PowerPoint 2010, obviously isn't 2013, it's the, and that's touch-centric. That automatically launches you straight back into desktop mode as well. So all those apps that aren't actually touch-centric yet, automatically will still launch. And that's one of the major things I'll talk about coming up around applications. One of the major advantages of Windows 8. You can take advantage of the new wave of touch applications that are coming out, but your legacy line of business systems that you actually still need to get people to access, instead of having to use alternate mechanisms to present apps, you can still natively sideload them onto these devices and still natively access them. And you can use a keyboard and mouse and the desktop mode's still there. So you've still got the best of both worlds. Exactly what you got with Windows 7 around desktop. And yes, there's a lot of brouhaha around loss of start button, but you've seen there you can still get a list of all your applications and launch them. But you've still got the enhancements of the touch UI there as well. So talk about the software. I don't think this point is truly understood and the power of this point. On the left-hand side, we've obviously just demonstrated that. That's the slate with the Windows 8 menu. The middle is the Lumia 920 from Nokia, the new device that's just about to come out with a Windows 8 operating system on it. And on the right-hand side is the upcoming console update for Xbox. What you've noticed is for the very first time ever, Microsoft has unified the interface between device, mobile, living room. It's exactly the same interface. Now, yes, admittedly, there are some menus across the top here, but using, who's got an Xbox at home? Most of you? Using an Xbox actual gaming thing is actually slightly different to using a touch. So you actually, there's a slight nuance in the change, but it's all tile-based. So for the first time ever, they've actually unified the interface. So this is the interface going forward. This is how they're going to do it. And people will get used to that because, you know, people have got Xboxes at home, they're using tiles now. So I think that's actually quite an important point. I suppose the other point there is, and this is also not well known, the actual code that sits behind Windows Phone now is the same code that's on Windows 8 and the same shared code base as Server 2012. So what they did was they took basically the code base of Server 2008, used that to go and develop Windows 7, and they did fork the code because they're slightly different products. But the same plumbing that sits behind all those products is with different interfaces is the same code base. So that's actually quite important too to understand. We've talked a bit about this and we've probably covered a few of these points, but it is built on the foundations of Windows 7. This isn't something where they just scrapped everything and started again and you think, oh, should I wait for Service Pack 1? This is built on Windows 7, which is absolutely a rock solid release. Windows 7 was actually rock solid in beta if you ran it. So, you know, from beta of Windows 7, these products have been rock solid and stable. It has got the new start screen we talked about, but it's still got that familiar Windows desktop you can get back to. You can still get access to legacy line of business applications in that desktop mode. We've talked to some very large corporate ICT departments that have gone through an enterprise deployment of iPad, and they've got 300-400 iPads in their environment. They're struggling with some of the service desk adoption challenges. So a couple of them are managing iTunes accounts is a good one. So if you've got an iTunes account, and I go and buy it, and it's a corporate iTunes account, how do I account for Angry Birds when I buy it? You know, do I have to come and give you $3 when I go and do that because it's actually a corporate subscription? And most IT departments that we're working with aren't getting extra resources to go and support this stuff. So the problem, you've got this downwards pressure problem where you've got all these execs running around going, I want an iPad, and they're sort of going, do more with less. And you're sort of going, something's got to give here. So these corporate ICT departments are struggling with that. The beauty about this is you can sideload the SAP client and stick it on there through System Center Config Manager and get to it through desktop mode. But if I want to go and buy Angry Birds, you go, you knock yourself out. Go to the Windows Store, set up an account, put your credit card details in, you can go and buy Angry Birds. That's cool. But that's your thing that you go do. The stuff that we're going to provide on your device comes through System Center Config Manager. They're corporately supported apps. The stuff on the Microsoft Store, that's, you go hard, that's fine. But you go and pay for that with your credit card. It's not a corporate thing. So you can actually get the best of both experiences where you can have Angry Birds and it's on a personal credit card, but all the corporate line of business apps are still managed and delivered through things like System Center Config Manager. So you do get the best of both worlds in that environment. The other thing is that's really interesting is this is cloud connected. SkyDrive Some people know about SkyDrive. It's sat in the background. It's been underused. It's been an afterthought. You couldn't use Explorer to drag stuff in and out. It's been one of those things that's just sat on the side for a while. SkyDrive is absolutely directly integrated into Windows 8. So for example, you can actually redirect all your settings in SkyDrive. So you can actually take things like favorites, desktop settings, your desktop, and have all that roam directly into SkyDrive at the back end. So if you log on a Windows 8 device here, and you had the SkyDrive integration set up, all of those settings follow you automatically. So SkyDrive is a first-class citizen in this and directly cloud integrated from the start. So that's actually also pretty good as well. And we've already talked about the wide range of hardware coming out. This is probably one of the, and I'm going to now talk about the other elephant in the room, which is RT versus Windows 8 Professional, because we're getting a lot of questions about that, so we'll cover that off now as well. So Windows 8 Professional is the one built for business. So Windows 8 Professional is intended to run on the x86 platform, and x86 is where you're going to run all the applications you know and love. So the majority of apps, and you do need to do your testing, but the majority of apps that you run on Windows 7 will run on Windows 8, on the x86 platform, on all that new generation of hardware. So, that's all the marketing stuff there from Microsoft, but it is reimagined and get it done, but it does keep everything connected. So Windows 8 Professional is that operating system that most of our corporates are going to adopt and adopt with those new devices. There's also this other thing come out called RT, and there is a lot of confusion about RT. Windows RT is built on the ARM processor platform, so it is a completely different processor platform. And Microsoft's got a long, long lineage in this. If you go back and think about it, Microsoft in the days of NT 351 used to have Alpha, Intel, and they had I think it was MIPS. MIPS was one of the supported platforms. So they used to be like NT 351 and NT 4 would run cross-platform. Same stuff now. Windows 8 will run cross-platform across ARM and also Intel. This is intended to be directly a consumer play. This is Microsoft's answer to the iPad. It is absolutely a consumer play. So Windows RT tablets, and what's coming out in the Surface store, the Microsoft store now, is the Surface RT tablets. So if you get online and buy a Surface on store.microsoft.com, which is where you go to buy that stuff, and it's only available online, you can't buy it through retail even at the moment, that is an RT tablet. Now the difference is, an RT tablet will run most of the stuff out of the Microsoft store, but it won't run Intel-based applications. So if you're doing a BYO play, and these people are bringing Surface RT devices into your environment, and you're trying to push Intel apps down to them, they will not work. These are intended to be a consumption device to do some email. It's got an inbuilt Office in this. It's got versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all the basic productivity apps. And it's designed for people for a BYO story to come in and be able to do email, be able to do those sorts of things, but it doesn't have Outlook. It uses the inbuilt email client. It uses the inbuilt calendar. So that's the RT device. Engineered, it uses most of the same code base, but it's absolutely engineered to get a long battery life and be a very predictable device for a consumer. You don't get into an iPad and sit there in settings and just tool around all day in settings. People want to get in, touch stuff, do things, shut it down, put it back on the dock. This is exactly the same type of concept. The other thing about the Microsoft Surface devices, and we're talking about Surface, all of our OEM partners, the majority are going to come out with RT type devices. Microsoft has its own version of that. Our OEM partners will most likely go through all partners and retail channels, but the Microsoft Surfaces, because we're getting a lot of client queries about it, are only available online. So the other thing is about apps, and this is the other $64 million question. Apps don't go away. If you're on XP and you think going to Windows 8 and skipping Windows 7 doesn't fix the apps issue, you still need to go and discover all your apps. You still need to go and remediate your apps if they don't comply. You still probably need to repackage them for delivery within a desktop environment. Even if you're going to sideload them through Config Manager, they still have to be identified, discovered, packaged, remediated. You still have to do that bit of work. But the other thing is that the experience is best when applications are touch-centric. And think about that with the lens of your environment and your applications and what you could do within your environment as well. In the Microsoft Store and applications, there'll be over 100,000 apps in the Microsoft App Store in the first 3 months. You sort of go, that's okay, it's not massive, and you think, that's true, but Microsoft, you talk about all these devices that are out there and these other competing online stores, Microsoft's got an install base in Windows of over 1 billion PCs. So, you know, they've got a massive market they're chasing to actually, and this will be one of the premier online stores because just through their install base. So they're already up and going pretty quick with applications. You're going to see that accelerate pretty quick in the first 3 months. And now I want to talk about a bit about productivity. And we have our own business productivity team. And this is really, really, really important. This is the end user adoption of the new interface. We've been using versions of the start button for a long time. So we're about to go and educate our end customer, our shared end customer, the user, on a new interface. Don't underestimate this. You will live and die by the success of your deployment or adoption of these devices based on customer satisfaction, which is an organisational change issue. And we've all been involved in projects, like most of us are technologists by the looks of the room. We've done MOE projects where we go and deploy the new OS and we give users an hour's training and pat them on the back and say, on your way. And they go and get the new version of Office and they go back and do exactly what they used to do before. Who knows you can double click the format painter in Word? Nobody. That feature's been in Word for 10 years. I didn't know that until 6 months ago when the business productivity team was sitting down and talking to me about something else, and they said, why do you go back and click Format Painter again, then do that, and go back and click Format Painter again and do that? Why don't you just double click it? What do you mean double click? Well, you pick the style and double click it and it persists all the way through until you uncheck it again. That literally saves like an hour a week for me in terms of productivity. That's the sort of stuff you need to think about when you're adopting this stuff, the end user step change, and the business productivity team do that. You invest a lot of money buying, hopefully from organisations like Data3, devices, software and deployment. And we seem to fail at the last mile, which is the actual end user, and changing what they do in terms of productivity. And Windows 8, that's amplified. We really need to think that through. Because the biggest asset, the biggest investment that Data3 makes in our balance sheet, when you look at our annual report, is in people. People are our biggest investment. If you can change the productivity of a staff member within Data3 by 5%, that actually equals bottom line return. It's on the national agenda at the federal government level, state government level. Everybody's talking about productivity. This is one of the ways you can actually enhance productivity. So what our business productivity team does in this instance is optimising the end user adoption process, stepping users through like walkthroughs like Justin just did, chalk talks with staff and talking about the new interface and helping with that transition process to get people there. And think that through. That's really important stuff. Supporting project managers. One of the other examples, I'll just throw in a couple of anecdotes out. This is actually a pretty important one too. Our guys also do coaching. So our business productivity team will sit down with key staff members and actually just watch what they do as an exercise. And I was sitting down with the CFO in a large organisation, and CFOs conservatively are about, what, 200, 250,000 a year? That's probably a cheap one. So sitting down with the CFO, watching how they work. And this guy's got 4 Excel spreadsheets open, and he's going Alt-Tab, 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 Alt-Tab. And I said, why do you Alt-Tab? Because I'm trying to compare the spreadsheet. Why don't you split screen? What do you mean split screen? This guy didn't know you could split screen Excel spreadsheets to compare them side by side. Now that's step change in productivity for a CFO that costs $250,000 a year, and he lives in spreadsheets all day, every day, could equal up to 5% in productivity. That's a massive bottom line return. So think about Windows 8 adoption and think about swipe and touch and that new interface, and then think about everybody going back to desktop mode and working the way they used to. That's the fear and the danger that we face adopting Windows 8, that people just revert to what they know because they're scared of the new interface, which is it's not dramatic change, and they revert to the way they used to work, which is a lost opportunity. So I suppose in summary, to put a bow tie around everything we just presented this morning, in our opinion, Windows 8 is ready for prime time. We've been piloting it for 4 months from the earliest betas. We've been using it on the touch devices and on the old generation of touch devices. We're really excited to get the new ones. We've got some devices here and some of them are actually based on previous, but there's going to be an amazing amount of choice, and it's an exciting time because it's not the traditional fare we've gotten before. These things are changing, and it's an exciting time to be around it. We also think Windows 8 is a solid choice for a BYO strategy. If you have a lot of contractors that work with your organisation, Windows to go with Windows 8 is actually a really interesting strategy around BYO as well. Having a self-contained operating system on a USB key, when a contractor turns up, you go, there's our image, and when they leave, you hand the USB key back, that's it. I don't care what's on your device. You could be infested with viruses. I don't know. I really don't care because our operating system is on that USB key. And with direct access, you can redirect all their folders and settings and put it back on a server, but everything on that USB key is encrypted and secure. I've heard of examples with like global mining companies where they're actually giving executives laptops and saying, when you go to China, just leave the device in a bin, don't bring it back, because we have so much spyware on it, it's a corporate risk. Imagine just going, here's the corporate SOE image on the USB key. I don't care, just go to a cyber cafe anywhere you want to, and that's the operating system, you're online and secure. The beauty about this though is we're using familiar tools to manage. Out of the box, System Center Config Manager, this is an Intel device. You just manage it. It's just there. You can still sideload applications to it. You can still manage it. You can still get inventory from it, all that sort of good stuff as well. You can use the store, but you can still sideload your corporate line of business apps natively on the device. You don't have to think about third-party solutions to try and present applications in a different manner. So it's just natively there. It's still a Windows device that we all know and love. So in our opinion, Windows 8 is the best of both worlds with no compromises. You get the new world of touch, the new world of that BYO device that people love. And we're getting clients coming to us now saying, talk to us about Windows 8 for our BYO strategy because some of the alternative products are killing us. So in our opinion, Windows 8 is ready for prime time. It is the best of both worlds and there is no compromises.